Welcome everyone. Today's video is all about dealing with finances as a newly married couple. So I'm here today with my wife Faith, and you may also see in and out of the camera I've got my dog with me, Louis, and so we've got a visitor today. But we'll be speaking about our experiences with finances as a newly married couple, what we've been through, what the challenges we've had to overcome, and the beauty that it's been able to create in our marriage, and leaning on each other's strengths, and the mental load of finances, because it can be quite a burden at times as well. And so we'll be going through and unpacking that and our experience and journey through it all. But the first question that I wanted to ask and talk about together is what have been our experiences in leading up to marriage, because obviously once you get married, that's people decide to do different things with finances. But leading up to marriage, it can be kind of awkward at first, I guess.
Yeah.
What do you talk about? What do you not?
Yeah.
What are each other's experiences? And so I just wanted to ask you, like, what were your experiences leading up to marriage and everything in between, really?
Sure, yeah. Like you said, it can be a bit awkward at first to start having those conversations about finance. And, you're two people like getting closer and closer together, but you're figuring out what you share, when you share it. You're trying to gauge the other person, and particularly on topics like finances, it's one of those things that can either carry a lot of shame with it, a lot of guilt, just uncomfortability. And so you kind of have to break through this barrier mentally while still having two individual finances. Because when you and I got married, we decided to join everything. But leading up to marriage, we have two, oh, there he is. We have two separate accounts.
Get down.
Come on, big boy.
Get down. There you are. We're two separate.
Yeah, we have two separate accounts, and you're trying to figure out your own finances while also working to understand the other person's strengths and weaknesses financially and navigating that together. And so I was always quite good at calculating finances in my head. Like if I had a budget, I had no issue ever sticking to a budget. And we had a wedding to pay for too. So that also plays a mix where you have two individual finances working towards paying for one wedding. So we paid for most of our wedding ourselves, with a lot of help from family, but most of it was from us. And it's a little bit awkward, but important, and you feel the weight of it, and you're just kind of trying to figure it out.
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, you were very good with calculating finances in your own head, whereas my experience was very much, I would just go and spend way too much money. I wouldn't be able to calculate in my head. And so I need a spreadsheet. I need to know how much is in each pot. Otherwise, it's going to be mayhem.
You need self-prescribed parameters.
Yeah. Or else my experience of that, if I've calculated in my head, is that I go into debt. And so that is my experience of that. And I know I didn't want to do that, especially going into marriage. And so we kind of had these conversations about how we're going to pay for the wedding, which is always an interesting place of your first conversation about finances in depth is about paying for a big thing, a big payment, a big chapter in your life, and how much do you want to put into it, how much you don't. And thankfully for us, we were on very much the same page of how much we wanted to spend on our wedding. But I know that can prove a lot of difficulty if one person wants to spend £100,000 and another person is 5 or 10,000, because these are all realistic figures within weddings, and so the expectations of that can be very different. But I think once we got married, what was your experience? Obviously, leading up to marriage is a whole other thing of your experiences prior. There's the wedding, and then once we got married, what would you say your experiences were with that?
Sure. Yeah, when we did a lot of the grunt work up front in terms of conversations around finances, and you say that a lot of the times people's first conversation is at the wedding, but I'm sure there's couples who don't even really talk about how much they want to spend on the wedding, and then things are getting spent, and there's so much room for miscommunication there. But you and I decided when we got married that everything was going to be shared. And so we have everything together. Everything's ours. And I think I expected myself to struggle with that a little bit more than I did. It was a very natural segue for me, which is very interesting because I'm very independent. I like being in charge of my own things, and that is the way I'm wired. So to have something kind of just be really seamless, yeah, it was really interesting. And I think too, because I'm international, I was finishing up my master's degree when we got married. I didn't have a job, you did, and so it could have very easily been like, oh, that's Joel's money and I used some of it, but everything was done together. And I think the reason that was more seamless is because we chose what we spent where together. We looked at finances together. When we were spending certain amounts of money, we did it together. Like even things like grocery shopping, you and I grocery shop together. And so everything's like a partner choice through it all. And so you're not just aligned on the big picture of finances, but you're aligned in the small moments too of finances sure. This would be good to, you and I will check in with each other of like, hey, is it okay if we buy this person a coffee? Something as simple like that, we're always in alignment on it. We always have a very quick conversation about, and I'd rather it be that way than for them to be a little bit more scattered, but we definitely over communicate when it comes to finances. And I think it's benefited us well.
Yeah, I think you're right in that. And I know everybody's got their own opinions on how to deal with finances within marriage. It can be a very touchy subject and a very burdensome topic, like you said at the beginning, with a lot of different experiences. And do you share? Do you not?
Yeah.
Do you pay the rent separately and then have your own spending money? And for us, we just decided from the very beginning that we were going to go in and share them and do it together. And like you said, the small and the big decisions we did together, which created an atmosphere for us that was very revealing of our own character and a space to be able to talk openly about it, but also it released that burden that it can carry, I believe, because we saw that there was an importance of coming in to this topic of finances together, and no matter what we do and no matter what happens, we do it together, and that was more important. I'm just reminded of the Avengers that we watched last night, and it was saying, no matter what we do it together, and if we lose together, we'll lose together. I know that has nothing to do with finances, but it just reminded me, and I think that's an important thing, that marriage is about that, that whatever you do, whether you win or whether you lose, you do it together. And we've been able to say that in finances, for us, our experience of finances since getting married hasn't been a very pretty one, in the sense of they haven't been flourishing. We haven't had loads of money to spend, but what we've done it together, and we've been able to do it well. Which has been such a blessing to be able to say that we've done that well. And I think we've realised there's areas in both of our lives of where there's like it might be a little bit touchy, of like, for me, when I'm in where I don't have a lot of money, I need a very small amount of money to go and spend just to feel like I have something.
On something like not practical.
Exactly. So it might be a coffee. And I'm not saying like I have to go out every day, but it could be once every 2 weeks. Or, I mean, if it's more than great, but then to feel like I have something, and I'm not just, I have no money at all. Whereas for you, you're like, let's just save it. And that's your feeling of having just a little bit left over, is that feeling. So I think a big thing for us has been learning where we both, how we can both cater to each other's needs and wants in that, which has been really good.
Absolutely. I think too, to kind of harp on that point a little bit, this has been something that's worked really well for us, is to share everything. It's not necessarily, I don't think it'd necessarily be the right thing for everyone to talk about, every coffee that you get or whichever, but it is something that has worked really well for us. And I think the reason that it has worked really, is that what you were staring at? I saw you looking over me. The reason it has worked really well for us is, like you said, finances have been tight for us ever since we got married, and it's been challenging. And I think that financial struggle is something that you anticipate, or maybe I just did in my own mind, of something that happens later down the road. Once you have kids and once you're having to pay for bigger expenses, or there's a housing market crash or whatever, you think it's going to be something that happens later down the road. But for you and I, we started off our marriage that way, of having that challenge. And so you're thrown into the fire a little bit, and having to navigate hard financial things like right early on. And I think that has been a blessing in disguise for us, because we know moving forward in our marriage, like wherever we're at financially, you and I can work through it, and we can do it together. And obviously I hope that we don't have financial crises throughout our marriage, but the fact that we don't have a lot right now, and we're having to have hard conversations about finances, and we're having to navigate that together, I think it ultimately is a blessing, and it creates a strong pillar in our marriage early on that other marriages may not reap the benefit of until, 10, 15, 20 years into marriage.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, that's really good. And the reality is, like you're saying, the hardships are producing something that lasts a long time and is building that steady and firm marriage for us. And not that you ask for it or ever want those times, but it does, and we can say that we've come out the other end of it better.
Yeah.
And although we'd advise doing certain things certain ways, we would, there's not one thing that fits all. And let me say this now, just to clarify, we are not financial experts. We're happy to give advice, but this isn't an expert advice, and so please don't follow it thinking, oh, this is going to work for me just because it works for them. And I just wanted to add that in there. But I think, just to add on finally to talk about something that we've had to work out, is that leaning on each other's strengths, or the financial burden that can come, because I believe there is a financial burden no matter what situation you're in, whether you have a lot or whether you have little. In any marriage, there is a financial burden that is upon every couple to figure it out, and to figure it out together. And that can be because of difference in opinion, or expectations, or past experiences, or whatever they are. Some people may want to spend a lot, other people may want to save a lot, other people may want nice cars, or get loads of food, whatever it may be, buy loads of clothes, whatever. And so, but there's that burden, isn't there, of dealing with finances. And I know for us, we've had to deal with things together, and lean on each other's strengths.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure what your experience has been in that.
Yeah, I think I have two thoughts. The first is, like you said, you and I have two very different strengths. On paper, technically, I should be the one who's better at finances, because of just the way I'm wired.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And that. So on paper, it's supposed to be that way. But when you're in a couple, that completely changes. And I don't think we would manage our finances nearly as well if we didn't have your brain as well. So for me, I'm really good at allocating how much money needs to go there, how much money needs to go there, what we need to prepare for in the future, having the foresight of like, okay, 4 months down the line, we're going to have this, so we need to put a little bit away here. So I'm quite good at that. And also, if we're short on money, I'm really good at being able to be like, okay, this is where we can cut. This is what, and I'm
very
good at
saving.
Yeah, I'm really good at kind of like putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And you're really good at tracking it. So you have no issue like keeping receipts, or like looking at things to save and creating a spreadsheet that's color coordinated and automatically populates when you send different money. And you have no issue like putting our money in our different pots so we can be on top of where our money's going. And I hate that. I can't stand it. I just keep it in my head because I can't stand it. But when you're in a couple and you are both spending money, like you have to have that. You have to have your brain. So we're able to do well on a really, really tight budget because there's both of us, and me being able to allocate how much we need and kind of be the director, if you will. And you're very much like the facilitator of this is how like that can actually outwork. And so that's my first thought, is in the practical sense, like you and I both have strengths. And I think it's also, you and I have set clear expectations of what we have with the other person in regards to finances. Like we were joking a minute ago, how I'm the saver and Jill's the spender. But I do have a healthy expectation of Joel that he manages his own spending, and that he has self-control in his spending. And he has the expectation of me that I'm not going to hold on to every dollar really tightly. And that there is going to be some financial freedom and liberty to actually enjoy the finances and not just pack it away for a rainy day. There's those expectations that we have of each other to be healthy in our finances. And that doesn't mean like it needs to look exactly the same in how we handle it. But if you're going to save, you need to save with a healthy heart. And if you're going to spend, you need to spend with a healthy heart. And I think that's the other thing. That's the other thing on top of the practical, my strengths and your strengths, but is both of us being healthy people who outwork finances in a healthy way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a way bigger picture almost of like trusting and believing in the other person and seeing the best in them, and going through that groundwork before you even get married to rely on the other person in that way and be like, no, I rely and trust Faith or trust Joel to deal with their finances well and their pot or their spending money or however you want to deal with it. Because if you don't trust them to spend their money or their section well, then there's probably something bigger there in a relationship. But I absolutely agree with everything that you've said, and I think my experience of that has been one in which I recognised very early on you were very good with finances. And so I thought in my head, okay, I'm going to let Faith take control of this, and I will be a part of the conversation, of course, but I'll let you take the lead. And I very quickly realised that you didn't like the admin of it. And I was happy to do the admin. And as time went on, I was becoming in distress because Faith worked a lot of it in her head. And I was like, I cannot do that any longer because it's stressing me out. I need it on paper. And so one day I had a conversation with Faith and was like, I need this on paper. And this is where healthy communication comes in of like, if you're in distress, just talk to your partner about it. And I had to come that day and say that to you. And so I said, tomorrow, can we have a conversation, or the day after, or whenever it was, and I'll get a spreadsheet of what it will look like in each pot, and then delivering and saving this and spending this and putting the bills to the side and whatever it looks like. And I remember us coming out of that conversation, and it was like both of us could just take a breath, like a deep breath, and just a sigh of relief because you felt like you weren't carrying that burden alone.
Didn't feel like it was all my responsibility.
Yeah, but then I felt like I was able to manage finances in a way in which I could understand. And we just felt both like together in that. And I think there's such a freedom that comes when you work together in your strengths. And so as Faith was saying, she's really good at cutting costs and figuring out the best way of doing things. And so generally if we're in lack and we're like, things are adding up, okay, Faith, where can we cut £5 or $5 here or there, or and so that's been the best thing I think we've done, that conversation and outworking that together and realising, no, this is a together task. And I think finally I just want to say that if this is something that you're going through as a newly married couple, I would advise, I don't want to give any financial advice, but advise that you talk about it together. Find out where each other's weaknesses and each other's strengths are and run with that and try and figure those things out. And so you can have the best marriage, but in the area of finances, there's that understanding, and that as we were able to walk out of that room that day and take a sigh of relief when we understood and managed it in a way that was best for us, that you can do the same. Because we just want that for everyone. That's the reason why we do these videos. We want you to be encouraged but equipped also to have the best marriage, to have the best relationships, and in this chapter, the best finance within your relationships. And so we want that for you guys, and we hope to be able to help in whatever way possible. And so I think that's everything for today really on that. And we just want to say thank you all for listening. Thank you for taking your time to come along our journey and our experience. And we hope that you've been able to take something for yourself and see that these the experiences that we've been through are to do with finances, but also very applicable in every area.
Yeah.
And that these experiences are able to be applied so that we can have happy, healthy, thriving marriages and relationships in every area. And so I hope that you're able to connect in soon and watch the other videos on the channel so that you can go and live your best life in whatever way possible.